We are recording. Thanks again for being here and for finding time this afternoon. I know it's a tough time of the day, and I'm glad you're on. You guys have been on some of these webinars before. This is our third. We'll do one more next week on the 28th at 10 o'clock on preparing your annual report. So if you're just doing a report this year, or we'll be doing one next year, this is a good one to sit in on as well. And that one will really cover a lot of the technology and Accreditation and where to put things and what not to put in, and that'll be a good one too. So today we're going to do just a couple of quick things here. We're going to talk about visits, why we do them. We'll talk about why you should serve on a visit, from my opinion, what your expectations of, what you will be expected to do as a part of a review team. And then we'll look at Accreditation and see how you'll do the work within this system. So that's how we'll end the day today. Is there anything else that you need us to cover? You guys have been into the system a little bit, so you know your way around. But if there's anything else, just throw it up in the chat box there, and I'll make sure that we cover that as well. I want to remind you, if you have a very specific question about a visit you're doing or you're going to be doing, and it doesn't maybe apply to everyone in the group, it's a really unique thing, just hold that and let's share that after the webinar. You can call me or send an email and we can talk through whatever your situation is. And the other good reminder is that your superintendents or folks who will manage your reviews might have a different way that they do this. So everyone has a little bit of a unique way that they provide support to the review teams. So if you feel like you have a question, go to them first. They may have a good answer for you. The guidelines I'm going to provide are kind of the global guidelines, and then they get adapted a little bit locally. So if you have questions, you can ask me, because I often know if they're doing it differently, or you can go right to your regional coordinator and ask them as well. All right, so let's just talk about the purpose of visits here. So, this accreditation process is a multi-step one. It includes completion of a self-study. There's an external evaluation process that you'll participate in. You'll provide recommendations. Your regional coordinator and superintendent will provide recommendations. And then finally, the report and your guidance will come to the MNSAA Leadership Council for review and approval. So imagine the school's probably starting their self-study 12 to 18 months in advance. And the process really doesn't end until either the January or the August Leadership Council that follows the visit. So we will do 2 visits for meetings for approval. The MNSAA Leadership Council will meet in January, and they'll review all of the fall recommendations and make their approvals or recommendations there. And then they'll also meet again in August following the annual reporting process. And they'll review all of those, make recommendations for what is approved and what isn't. So it's a long process. The schools spend many months convening all these diverse stakeholders, and they're really looking at school operations according to the standards and benchmarks. And by the time you get there, they've already scored themselves according to those benchmarks. They've created narratives to help them justify the scores. And the most difficult thing that they will do is they will be gathering evidence for you so that they can show you that what they've written, what they've scored is accurate. That's a lot of work. If you've been through the process, you know that a thoughtful and honest assessment is a lot of work. It takes a lot of people, a lot of hours to get it done. But we really think that if you are thoughtful and honest with yourself, you have a fairly clear roadmap for improvement. So it is beneficial to the school because they don't even have to wait for you. They know where they need to go. And if they're thoughtful and honest with it, there won't be a lot of surprises. So when you get there, if the evidence they've provided is adequate, nobody will be surprised. You really will just be justifying and validating what they've already found during their review. You know this, you get lost and you can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. And schools are so stuck in their operations, so focused on the things that you know need improvement, or so focused on the things that are wonderful about your school. It's sometimes hard to step back far enough to see what else is going on in the building that's notable. And that's the beauty of a site visit. So your site visit team is independent. They will come to you with very few preconceived notions about your school. They won't have probably a lot of expertise in the day-to-day operations. And their job is to examine the data and the evidence that you provide to verify that the assessment that they've done is complete. You'll have lots of evidence available to you in a credit track before the visit. This is one of the important things of the system, is that we wanted it to be very data-driven. So it's not enough to write a great narrative. You have to be able to back it up and show multiple pieces of evidence to demonstrate that the practices that you claim you have, you are actually doing on a regular basis. In addition to what you'll find in a credit track, you'll have a day or 2 days to look for additional evidence. So you may find either that you are looking for additional evidence to show that the practice is in place, or you may stumble upon it. But what you find on site will also impact the results of the report that you do for the school. Both of those, what you see in a credit track and what you do on site, are equally valuable. So in addition to the process of reviewing the self-study, the schools really have a great advantage having you there. It is a wonderful thing to have a group of professionals come into the building and really spend time with you examining both the strengths and the challenges in the building. You'll have opportunities to ask questions that will make them think differently about something. You will be able to provide your professional knowledge to them when they're asking. And you'll offer ideas that, frankly, probably never came up before you got there. So it's really neat to have you on site. I know how much the schools value having this peer team available. Okay, so why serve? One, it's service. It's what we do. It's important. It's a part of the process. It's what keeps this whole accreditation system together. We need volunteers like you to step up to be a part of this. And it is time consuming. We know it. There's a lot of review to do in advance, but we think when you leave there, you will feel that it was a valuable experience. We know folks, folks who've done these reviews year after year. They do them a lot, and they do it because they're learning. You're constantly learning when you're on these visits, and so there's a real value to you. In addition to, being of service to others, you're preparing for your own visits. You will have a visit coming up. I think, Wyatt, yours is maybe coming up soon. But it's important to see what it looks like on the other side of the table. So being able to see how people put their narratives together, to see how people provide evidence, to see how people are scoring themselves, and what's kind of, is there a variance between what the school's reporting and what the site team is finding. Those kinds of things are super valuable, being able to see that from the inside kind of. The other thing is you're going to learn new strategies. So bring the notepad, bring a sharp pen. You're going to be taking notes throughout the visit on cool strategies, cool tools, great resources that you're finding on site. So it's a really good experience. Again, I know people who do these year after year, and I don't think I've ever been to a visit where someone says, well, that was a waste of time. It always is a really good use of your time. So if you're not on a visit already, talk to your superintendent. Or you can talk to me and I can find you a visit too. And you don't have to necessarily do one within your diocese, but we can help you find a visit to be on. Okay, let's talk about expectations, what people are expecting of you. First, get familiar with the standards and benchmarks. You can go to catholicschoolstandards.org and pull up the standards documents. I've shown you those, the benchmarks, the rubrics. There are some great guidance documents and a glossary of keywords. Those things are really useful. Spend time and just go through those. Be familiar with the language of the rubrics, because what you will find is the rubric language is very tight. It is going to force you into a score. If you use them with fidelity, you're going to find that you can only pick one score. You shouldn't be stuck on the fence. You'll want to be, and you'll want to say, I'd really love you to give you a 2.5, but really the language is going to force you either into a 2 or into a 3 or a 4, wherever you end up. I would ask you, be really true to that language. So here are the painful ones. If it says all, it means all. It's important that you're consistent between the language of the rubrics, but also it's important that you're consistent between schools. So if you're doing multiple visits, you should be holding them to the same expectations and standards. Yes, a smaller school, a school that's under-resourced, may struggle in some areas. That's okay. We're not going for perfect scores here. We're going for honesty. So that consistency is super important as you do these reviews. It's something that we practice in the summer when we do our reviews. We always want to make sure that we are staying consistent to the way we review all of the reports at the end of the year. That really does make sure that we have a fair process, but also one that's equally valuable to schools. We want to make sure that everybody gets a very thorough review. So 30 days in advance, in the ideal world, again, remember I told you that there are little variances in this across the state, but generally the recommendation is that you will have access to the self-study 30 days in advance. That gives you time to get in, to look at all the reports, and to read and to take notes. They're long. I mean, we're looking at 13 standards, 70 benchmarks, countless pieces of evidence, potentially, long narratives. It's a lot of work that people put into these, and they deserve, your time. If you sign up to do this, I'd love you to make sure that you're giving it adequate time for review. You might say, okay, I'm going to focus on one standard a night, or maybe one benchmark a night if you have time to do that. But really make sure that you're dedicating the time to get it done. It's a lot of work. Take notes. Have a notebook, standard by standard. You will forget what you saw and where you saw it unless you write it down. And if you're doing multiple visits, it really gets crazy. So make sure you're putting that down. If you're a leader on a standard, sometimes there's an expectation that you read the full report. But sometimes you'll be asked to lead a conversation on one of the standards or on a domain or benchmark even. Be prepared to do that. So take some extra time with those standards. Take some extra notes that will help you facilitate a conversation if you're asked to do that. And so when you're on site, I want you just to not be afraid. You were invited there because you are an educational professional. You are an expert in what you do. And your perspectives are important. They don't have to match everyone else's perspectives. And if you're new and you feel like you just don't want to chime in, just do. Just jump into the conversation, ask questions, challenge people's ideas, and make, feel really comfortable. It's hard, those first couple standards as you're going through. There's a lot of storming and norming that happens there. But you were asked to be there because you have good perspectives. So be sure to share those. Okay, so let's take a look at Accreditation. Let me show you a couple things. I'm guessing this will time out as soon as I click something. I borrowed someone else's access here, and we're going to look at your screen here is going to look different because in this center area you will see your school information, your annual report. The access I'm using is for an associate superintendent, and so we'll be able to access a report that they're actually working on right now. There are 2 visits going on that we can review. What will be the same is over to the left here, you'll see site visits, and that's where you're going to go. Once you've been added to a site team, you will have a list of schools. You may just have one. Maybe you're just on one visit this year. But if you're on multiple, you'll see them organized here. And you'll see them organized. You can sort by visit date or status and actions here. So let's take a look at Corpus Christi here. They have an interesting one that I'd like you to review. To review the report, you'll simply hit review. And you'll see this looks just like what you submit on an annual basis. So there is the school profile, all the profiles here. Remember that we talked in other reports or other webinars about the NSIP and the Plan Plus. Those will stay here until everyone is done with the Plan Plus, but you can see here it says no file uploaded. That's because they're using the new standards for their site visit. So we'll never see anything in these categories for them again. Membership report we can see is there because it says review, and then there's the annual self-assessment. Your job will be to go through all of these reports and just review them for accuracy. Does it seem that all the information that's there has been updated? If not, take notes on your sheet of paper. And you'll do that simply by clicking review. So let's look at the obligation checklist. You can see that they've completed this. Remember, you can pull down and look at each of the different categories, or you can proceed to the next category. Okay, so they've done the work there. If you saw something that was marked no, then you could make a note to yourself. It appears that they did not complete their lockdown drills or whatever it is, and then you can check that with them when you're on site. Going back to the report here. So you want to make sure take your quick glance through all of those, and then we're going to go to the annual self-assessment, and that's where you'll do the bulk of your work. So remember that when we looked at these reports in our previous webinars, you can see here we're at the 17-18 school year. You can see this is the first time they've used the new standards for their visit because they took a chance back in 15 and then realized they were doing the wrong thing. But here's when their first year is. And then these are the site visit scores. So you can see this is what the school reported, and this is where. So what's interesting here to me is generally we see there, again, if you do a thoughtful visit, there are no surprise, or a thoughtful self-study, there shouldn't be any surprises. Usually the scores line up. Here, some of them even go up. So that's kind of neat. You can see that maybe the site team saw something that the school didn't see. So as the site team, when you are gathered together, well, let's do this first. You're going to look at their scores. You won't see site visit scores because you wouldn't have met yet. And then you can take a look at comments. So these are the comments that our friends at Corpus provided. I'm going to show you this again because I know we've talked about this previously, but they are indicating which benchmark, which now as a reviewer, aren't you glad they did that? They're indicating what the benchmark language is. They're showing you what their score is, and they're talking about their supporting narrative. So they're giving you all the information that they think you need. And they do that all the way through. Okay? And then they're providing you evidence. In this case, let's see what they did. They have standard one evidence all in one place. Let's see, maybe a Google Doc? Yes, it is. So they've broken it out by benchmark. Let's just peek in there. And then they've told you all of the things that support the benchmark. So you're going to have to dig into each of these. Some of them are just quick pictures, a prayer before a game. Others are strategic plan documents that you want to spend a few more minutes on. So there's a lot there. And then, of course, that's there for every single standard. So really do think about how you'll use your time to get these read. Now, when you're on site, let's see, I wanted to show you. Okay, so we're going to be in standard 2 here. See their scores, really consistent. No surprises here for this school, some really high scores. That's really unusual to see that many 4s. Comments here, nicely organized. I will tell you I've not read this report. I'm just simply commenting on how it's organized. I know for a reviewer, this would be really simple to follow. I hope they're all simple to follow for you. And then you will look at the evidence like we just showed you earlier. Okay. Go back to comments. And here's where your job is. You have two responsibilities there. In addition to reading everything at home, when you are on site, you are going to be asked to come to consensus on scores. So when you're reading the benchmark language, and let's do that right here by clicking, your rubric pops up for you. So we know what benchmark 2.1 is about, and then we see the language that tells us what score they probably fit into. The smart thing is to start with, if they said 3, read the language in 3, read the narratives, look at the evidence, and decide, is it really a 3? Maybe it's a 4. Maybe they've given a little bit more that would indicate that they're a 4. But you'll do that as a team and go through each of these. Everyone does it a little bit differently. I know some teams that start at standard 5. I can't remember why, but for them it made sense. They wanted to start at 5 and then work their way around. Others will start at standard 1 and work through. You may just be asked, do you agree with these scores? And if you disagree, they're going to ask you why, and then they're going to, as a group, come to consensus on what the score should be. Sometimes you'll put it on hold and say, you know what, we don't have enough information. Let's get out into the building and find more. So you'll come to some consensus. You'll have a process that you'll use for scoring. And then your job is to comment. And there are two things that you're going to do here. Down, 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 after their narratives. They've closed this one already. There will be a text box here. This one must have just been submitted to us today. So in this is a place for you to put your comments. Now, this is brief. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. In this case, remember, they lowered one score. It must have been 2.3. They lowered him, it looks like, from a 4 to a 3. Your job is first to validate. Are the scores accurate? If they are, your only responsibility is to say, we agree with the scores that you provided for the following standards. We agree that these are standouts, that these things are great. And we also agree that you have work to do in the following areas. What I love about what they do here in 2.5 is they say, to move to a 3, examples of student work using scripture and Catholic intellectual tradition is needed. That's a great, and they went right to the rubrics for this, to see what is missing, and then let's tell you what's missing. So it's a really clear indicator for the school what they need to do to grow and improve, not just for the sake of the score, but for their improvement in general. Again, 2.3, to move to a 4, teachers would need to create and maintain professional learning communities. These are really great strategies that you're offering. So they didn't spend a lot of time, in this case, on the scores that they agreed with. They really put a justification for why they changed a score, either because they moved it up or because they moved it down. When you're on site, you'll get through all of these and do that, and in the end, probably you will have written the bulk of this report. Truly, if you've been through a visit in the past, you used to get a long paper document that went through everything that the people reviewed while they were on site with you. Here, you will get this returned to you. So during the visit, the school does not have access to what the site visit team is typing. That's just for the site team to see. The superintendent, I think, can see it too. So, and the reason for that is you're typing, you're on site, you want to clean things up, you want to be more thoughtful. You can type in this real time. Oftentimes people will create a Google Doc and start creating their comments there, but you can all be in the system at the same time, creating narratives together. So it may be that Wyatt is in charge of standard 2 and Krista has standard 3. You could be doing that and each taking the lead on creating the narratives. Sometimes there's one note taker, oftentimes people share it, but that's how it works. Once you are done on site, your team chair will clean it up. They'll send it to the superintendent to review, and then the superintendent will submit it to us telling us it's ready. We send it back almost immediately to the school to say congratulations for completing this portion of the process. You now have access to your report and you can see what the site team is recommending. And then I say, these are going to review by the Leadership Council in either January or August. So the process isn't complete yet, you aren't approved yet, but generally you know where you stand. And frankly, you would know where you stand, the minute your site team leaves. So there should be, again, no surprises. The site visit itself, while you're on site, might be different than what you've expected in the past. You are probably going to convene in some way with the schools, but you will spend a lot of time on your computers, on your laptops, or looking at it on a screen, really looking at the evidence that's already been provided to you electronically. You will probably begin to gather a list of things that are missing that you'd like to see. You're probably gathering a series of questions that you'd like to ask the stakeholders when you do interviews. and then you're typing. It's an odd change from visits in the past where you really spent, lots of time observing instruction. You do a little bit less of that now because of the responsibility for evidence is on the school, and we ask them to provide it in the system so that we can really have a data-driven process. So honestly, I think that's kind of it. If you all, do you have questions or comments maybe on visits that you've been on? I think the nice part about this is you will have a team chair who's done this before, and they will be very good about you know, setting up an agenda and making sure you know what you're doing. One of the big challenges, making sure that you get the report in time to read it, and then you read it. While you're on site, you will be well taken care of. Um, it's really making sure that you have enough time prior to the visit to review. I've been in really painful reviews where people um, didn't get to read, and it's really obvious. And it lets the team down, honestly. So if you can make sure that you dedicate the time to review, you'll be in really good shape. So, okay, well, that is it. I won't keep you longer. I will just quickly, if I can find my PowerPoint, show you. Oopsie. All right, just want to remind you, if you have questions, going to a visit, you can't get into Accreditation and you need some tech support, or you can't remember where some of those buttons are, just email me or call me. I can get on. This is a mobile-friendly app, so if I'm at a baseball game or at a swim meet, I can pull out my phone and I can, help you log in and do what you need to do. But feel free to give me a call. When you are on your visit, you are my priority. So I'm going to make sure that everything you need is available to you. So don't hesitate to call or email, and we'll make sure we take care of you. And that is it. And thank you again for joining us this afternoon. And hope to talk to you again for the annual report process. And I will, once that webinar is done, I'll make sure that you have all of the recordings so you can listen to them over and over and over if you like. And thanks again for your service and for being on a review team. And I look forward to running into you at one of the visits. Take care, both. Take care. Bye.